That's good, good, good. That's all good. And then we'll start this guy in a sec. Hang on, let's. And where am I going now? Oh, let's start this one. Boom. Banner. 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 Welcome to the Everyday Sniper. You got Frank from Snipers Hoid, and we're here with Chris Way again. We got a live going on the Snipers Hide website, and I'm recording the podcast for everybody. I think we got a pretty good show for you, and you'll be able to go to the Snipers Hide website, go into the Hide TV if you have a supporter account, and you can watch this video after. So if you don't want to listen to it a second time, you can actually watch it the second time if there's anything that we're talking about. That sounds kind of cool. But hey Chris, what's up?
What's happening?
So here we are. We're in our. We'll check it out. Make sure we're in our live. Yeah, we're there, man.
Yeah, there's a little delay, but if you're listening to this live, make sure you guys send some messages through the Snipers Hide chat feature so we can make sure that that's going.
Yeah, there is definitely the chat box on the site. Everybody was like, "Where's the shout box? We want the shout box back." And there is one in the live. There is a chat box / shout box, and you can interact with us while we're talking in live. So, otherwise, man, it's freaking snowed again. Right?
Yeah.
It's like, well, I got things to do to the range. It's like we're all ready to go. I got these programs all happening. And yesterday, last night, night before, whatever you want to call it, we woke up to snow. So I woke up to like 2-3 inches on the ground. It's 30 degrees out. And it's like, when are we getting spring, man? We're going to go right from winter into summer is what's going to happen. So, we definitely would have more to talk about if the weather wasn't like being such a freaking jerk with us. But anyway, we'll see what's going on. And like I said, the chat is open for those who jump in on the live. Let me look in the app real quick, make sure our indicator is working. And we're going to the community. Oh no, it's actually not showing up that we're loading. There it is. Now it shows it's live. Yeah, it's in there and we can load it and we're ready to go. So the live is up and running. So what we're talking about is we came up with a question came up in the Snipers Hide forum, and what they're asking us about is standards, right? So they want us to talk about, what should they be doing? What kind of standards do they have? And I actually, this person had a unique problem. Their range only goes to 600 yards. Okay, so I addressed this. I told Chris in looking at these guys on Snipers Hide, I have a qual, for lack of a better word, or a standard that's 100, 300, 600 yards. And it's spelled out that it's 3-shot prone. And it incorporates a craft drill into the target at 100, into the target at 300, and then on a plate at 600. And it's a drill you can work to basically see how you are. And we were talking standards like martial arts, and you can jump in and kind of go how we were playing the idea of standards to the belt system within the martial arts. So it's like people are looking for a way to measure themselves. And generally speaking, over the last couple of years, anytime you want to measure yourself, you tell somebody to go to a match. Go to a match and see where you stand. But I was telling Chris, there's a lot of people out there that are following everything we're doing on the training side, but won't go anywhere near a competition. So they still want to have a standard that they can compare themselves to, a metric to look at. And that's one of the things that we're talking about here is how do you measure yourself against others, especially if you're not a comp guy, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And another question came up, one of the last chats that we had about developmental curve. And then that's kind of where we met in the middle with the idea of a standard or, I mentioned the belt system, not because I think we should have belts, but this idea of progression as you develop and making sure that you have the skills to really fill in the level that you're at, right? So there's standards that you need to fill in before you move to the next one, and if you don't fill in those standards, then you stay there and work on them until you have satisfied those. And I know that in different disciplines, in different jobs, and in different areas of shooting, there may be pockets of people that have their own standards, but there really aren't universal standards. And because of that, it's fun to talk about. We could say, look, this is what we see, this is how people perform, and here's a general and contextual kind of set of things that people should be able to do before progressing. And certainly some people just jump right into competition and they do pretty well. But a lot of times those people, if you change details, small details, their performance has wild swings up and down. And so if we reassess and look at things in terms of standards to fill in before you move forward, I think that not only gives people things to explore at the level that they're at, but also backfill things that they may have missed on the way towards whatever their particular outlet is. And I think that's interesting. And I think it's helpful for anybody because there are so many more shooters that don't really do any specific thing, but they also want to know where they stand or where they might compare, and putting those down is fun.
Well, and you brought up a kind of an interesting point where you were saying how talking to people who engage in martial arts and different things like that, they found they weren't really that, I don't know the right word for it, but they weren't really that correct student until after they got their black belt. And so you were kind of saying with me, sort of like sniper school was your black belt program. You do that, and then the next thing you know, you're more prepared to where you need to go and what to look at. Where when you're moving up through the belt system, for lack of a better term, when you're moving up through the belt system, you're kind of experimenting, you're struggling, you're looking for that light bulb in the dark, I guess is a way to go, the pull string, right? So there's a pull string in the dark. And when you move up to that next belt system, you're moving around in the dark looking for the string until you can find the light to turn it on to get you to the next place. And that's where it's like, well, what if you don't know you're looking for a pull string?
Right.
You're looking for, and instead you're looking for a wall switch. You know what I mean? So that's kind of what happens with what we do with shooting. One, people mimic what they see, right? So I see a picture, I see somebody doing something, I'm going to mimic that. And that's kind of, but in a still image, you have very limited context. In a video, you have better context. So it's like, where is the student going to find out what's happening? I guess, or what they need to know, I guess, is that thing. But yeah, I mean, I'm gonna go. It's coming up live, man. I want to see if there's any chats in there.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, there it is.
So I think what really starts to develop when we were talking about this before we turned the computer on, it's really interesting because you kind of fall into rabbit holes of where do you start and how do you build that base. And let's say somebody has a specific outlet and they never really ran into these other issues yet. That doesn't mean that they won't run into those issues. So for example, a lot of hunters that I meet, when they're hiking in with their packs, the rifles are in their pack. And so being able to deploy them and engage something with them in a short period of time is not really going to happen. there are hunters that have quick deploy or whatever, but if their mindset is, we're just going to hike in for a long time and then we're going to strip down and then we're going to start hunting, um, they may not have thought about the idea of loadout and quick deployment because it's not in their kind of scope. Whereas a competitor that's used to just dropping a rifle in a bag probably isn't thinking about, if we have to go in 6 miles to hunt, how are they going to carry it all back there in order to do the system chop? And so filling in those voids of, well, elementary set of criteria for carrying the gear that you need, deploying the gear in a reasonable amount of time, accuracy standards, equipment maintenance, a general list of essentials that you start with, and then you start to build up from there. It's always going to have more than any particular discipline, but it's going to allow you to backfill things that could come up, or in the basic ones, they're going to come up more often than not. As you get more advanced, they're going to happen less often, but you're going to be much more detailed and specific about the particulars that you might need to deal with, right? If we're hunting deer at 100 yards, parallax adjustments between different scopes is probably less of a concern than for a precision rifle shooter that's shooting a 1 MOA target at 800 yards or alternating between 200 and 400 yards. They're going to need to be able to fine tune those things because you've got more margin of error for some things at closer ranges. But understanding certain things at the beginning and maintaining that, right? Safety, handling, basic ballistics, understanding zeros, and then building up from there a list of things that are universally acceptable as you go towards that kind of black belt level, after which, right, that's where your kind of true training and education technically probably starts as like on your way to mastery. But getting to that point, I think there's a lot more people that aren't quite sure.
Yeah, no, and that came up at SHOT too, is talking to manufacturers and talking. It's the most basic of things they're finding the problems with. So I asked the manufacturers, I talked to them, I'm like, how can Sniper's Hide help them? How do we work within this environment of precision rifle in the world? And how Sniper's Hide can help in talking to these guys as customer service. And that sounds like vague, but what it is how to set the ocular on a scope. How to do these little things many of us are taking for granted, but there's a whole group of people out there. This comes like, I use on the side, like I'm a Twitter guy on the side now. I don't know why I just bounced in because it's quick. It's like my butterfly or hummingbird brain can keep up with Twitter because I don't want to invest too much time in it. And what I notice is you get a lot of people like the David Hogg fucking anti-gun kid, Harvard dude. He posted a thing of him this weekend shooting a shotgun. And he went, look, everybody, I'm not anti-gun like they tell you. I just shot a double barrel shotgun. And it's like, dude, give me a fucking break. Okay, that's not competence that you picked up a double barrel shotgun and you shot it. Like I go to people all the time, is supercars. Guy buys a supercar, he has the means and the money, he buys a Dodge Viper or something, right? And then the next thing you know, he gets on the highway, he kicks it in the ass, it fucking spins, and he smashes it. It's the first time he jumped on it, and he's already smashed it up. Now, you could say he owns the car, but he's not competent with it. He doesn't know the first thing about it, and he's going to smash it just like he did really quick. If you Google like Lamborghinis, especially like in China, there's a ton of pictures of people smashing them outside the dealership. So they buy it, they haul ass leaving, and they smash it. So gun industry is the same way. We can buy something, we can own it, but does that really establish a competence? And so where do we have to go in order to start to become not only familiar but competent with our equipment.
Yeah.
So we want to go beyond ownership. And that's kind of where I think we are with the website, with the app, with the videos, with the classes, with the training, all that stuff that we're doing. We're trying to create marksmen. We're trying to create a practical marksman where you're beyond the owner. You're now competent with your equipment.
Yeah, and like we might be kind of preaching to the choir with listeners of this podcast, because like I would guess that majority of listeners, or in terms of gun owners, like probably the top 1% of people that understand ballistics. And right, if you go to a competition, basically everybody there is the upper end of gun owners. So, but that's helpful to be able to say, because when you look on social media like Facebook, it's not uncommon for somebody that gets excited, they get a little bit of competency, they come in and then they start asking questions, and then people start attacking them like, well, those are all noob questions. Like, man, it's not. That person actually probably is more informed just to get them there. And then, but if you go to Green Mill on the the hunter site, and they open it up to the public and the hunters come in. So these are people that have a hunter license, so they passed hunter safety, and they're going to go hunting. And every single day, somebody comes. There's a Cabela's just down the street. Somebody shows up with their rifle still in the box, scope still in the box, 2 boxes of ammo, and they want you to help them put it together, get a 0, and send them out the door. Like, what is the bare minimum I need to go hunting? And that's an incredibly difficult position to be in, I think, because you go, shit, they want to go, hunting with this thing, and they own it.
Yeah.
And they have every right to, but it's a little scary.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I think that's what we're talking about. Those are people that have every right to do what they're going to do, but you need to be able to say, look, here's some boxes that you should probably check before you go hunting. And if you can, come back here a couple times and we can work on skills to guarantee that you're going to be able to hit what, and a lot of times they have no idea what you're talking about. Like, what do you mean I'm not going to hit a deer? Like, I guess somebody told me, you just aim here and it'll be good to go. And you think, wow, okay. Let's do a little test. We'll try to simulate that on these targets after we get it zeroed. But those things I think are really cool, because then we could make a checklist of basic competencies and then ladder them out from that point towards a goal, but not just be that shooter that has everything.
Well, even just back to the whole Twitter world, there's a bunch of handgun Twitter's huge, right? So you look at the guys that are doing the handgun matches. Those handgun matches have that standard, right? They go and they shoot their standard that tells them where they're gonna be. And I see this one guy because he likes to document his journey. He's not a whiz bang guy. He's not John Wick. And so, but you see him and he's like, oh, I dropped a point on my standard. Hang on. It's just, it's like, we don't have the skills stage. Like, we don't have something that says where you belong within the field. It's open, right? So everybody shows up and it's kind of looked at as like you're all equal, but we completely know you're not all equal. And what we really should be doing is that sort of ABC division, and looking at people and saying, you're an A guy, you're a B guy, and you're a C guy, and following that handgun model a little bit more, because it informs you. It's not just an arbitrary name or classification. It's an actual classification, right? So you're an A division guy, you're a B guy, you're going to go over here, and if you do better, then you can move out of that. But yeah, it's we need a way to rate everybody and have a classification that way, rather than all just saying, I shot 3 matches, I did well, but I didn't shoot 5. If I shot 5, my rating would be better. But I shot 3, which is the minimum. So what's the standard if I shot 3, right? And I score 18th, a 28th, and an 8th. You know what I mean? So where's my average? Well, I'm a 12th average or a 16th place average guy. Okay, that I can work with. That tells me where I should be staying, maintaining, and looking at it. And so that becomes the question that I think precision rifle world is missing. We don't have you showed up with a standard on your sleeve, I guess is a way of putting it. I mean, even in the military, right? Expert, sharpshooter, marksman. We know where you're going to go, and the goal would be to beat your previous score. But you know where you stand. And in the precision rifle competition shooting world, we don't have a goal, or we don't tell people where we stand. Now you can go at the end of the year and say, last year I paid the series, they monitored my score. I came in 33rd out of 500 people. Okay, that's good to know. But you needed last year to know, and that may have changed this year.
But that also, like, that already assumes like those are good shooters to begin with. So that's teasing out details of shooters that technically are actually all probably really good to begin with. But what precedes that, I think, has a lot of room to grow. And that's all the people that are coming up and saying, I guess like what I just visualized when you were talking was like an elevator. And, let's say PRS is on the 10th floor of this building. There, those rankings are hashing out rooms down a hallway on the 10th floor. But how does somebody know when to get off on the 3rd floor on their way to the 10th floor? And then what are the things that they need to do in the hallways of those floors that'll fill in their knowledge base to allow them to effectively go up to that next level? I think that's interesting because, a lot of people just have to basically jump to the 10th floor and then, figure it the fuck out when they get there. And that caused a lot of problems. And I think that caused a lot of people just to leave because they realize that there's a huge gap and it might not be the outlet for them. And it's really interesting to be able to fill in all of the things on the way up. So from the bottom floor, how do you fill it in on your way to the 10th floor that then, has some things? If the pistol people have it really well developed at the competition level, but they have like 30 floors. And so you're talking about like, the Grandmaster qualifications on the 30th floor are really nitpicky. But think about somebody on the 1st floor that's at the gun shop.
Well, I think we can do it with 3. Yeah. I mean, I think we can get away with 3, that sort of, expert sharpshooter marksman model. I don't think we need 30. I think we can get away with 3. And if you think about it, if you visually created that, like, the B people are all wearing blue hats, the A people are wearing red hats, and the C people are wearing tan hats, of something like that, or a tag. If an RO comes up and here's a guy struggling and he's wearing a tan hat, you're like, okay, dude, let's help you. But if you get a red guy come up and now he's being punky with you, and you're like, who are you, dude? Well, wait a minute, you're a red hat. Get the fuck out of here, man. You know what you're doing. And no, you don't get an alibi on that. But everybody gets to kind of play this, who am I, why am I, what am I? Let me redo that because it didn't go the way I wanted to. And we're like, okay, that's fine. But if we had a system that said, you're an expert, you're a sharpshooter, you're a marksman, you might go, okay, you're the marksman. Yeah, we're going to let you get away with that. Experts, fuck no. Sharpshooter, it's a coin toss. You're a nice guy. You came up to me polite. Yeah, I'm going to let you do it over. No, you were a dick. You told me what I was going to let you do. And nah, you ain't going. You know what I mean? But it then creates a visual way, like a belt system in martial arts. It's like, well, wait a minute. I want to fight that guy. Well, why do you want to fight that guy? Well, because he's a yellow belt and I'm a fucking brown belt.
Right.
I don't want to fight that other guy who's a purple belt. you know, because he might be pretty close to me, but I want that belt, you know, but yeah, it's weird, you know.
Mhm. But there's so many cool things that surround it that I think are fun to be able to, like, so I'm thinking back to when I jumped into shooting competitions. Like, I could shoot targets good, right? I thought I was a good shooter, but I wasn't a good competitor. I didn't know enough. You know, it's one of those, like, okay, you're good enough to go to competitions. Everything goes great. You could score well, but you're not like a lot of these other shooters. And let me explain what I mean by this. I went to a competition, um, and the rifle, the build that I was using was a Lone Peak Action, and like a Bartlein barrel or a proof barrel, whatever. But the point is, I was using a Lone Peak Action, and I had the technique of really running the bolt hard. Some people shoot with running the bolt
Tony
really freaking
Burks
hard,
used to
right?
rip them off.
And
Boom.
so at some point in the competition, the pins for the bolt stop had come out, and my bolt stop fell out, and I was dead in the water. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't shoot. All of a sudden, you know, basically my day was done. Brian Black was there, one of the owners of Lone Peak, and in his truck, he had a huge kit with all of the parts that you would need to rebuild an entire rifle, including the pins and bolt stop for one of their actions. And he simply went over to his truck, got the parts, came back, fixed my rifle, and I kept competing. That demonstrates to me that, you know, he was on the 10th floor and I was on the 3rd floor. I didn't have the equipment to maintain my gear in the field at a reasonable level, and I was dependent on somebody else. And so learning that and preparing and having that was, it's like a standard that I didn't meet, but I tried to jump ahead. And when you try to jump past standards that you should have satisfied before, they often come out of the woodwork and bite you. Now, that doesn't mean you know, I don't think it's all the time, but I felt that, right? I felt the difference between his knowledge and experience and my lack of knowledge and experience when it came to that. And I realized, wow, there's a lot to fill in here. It's not
Mm-hmm.
just, can you do this stage and hit all the targets? Because at that point you're saying, okay, yeah, I can do that. I can do that. But I'm vulnerable because if anything goes wrong, I'm going to screw it up. And a good shooter has covered those contingencies already. And so those are things that should have been backfilled by me. And as that grew and my shooting progressed and all that, like, you know, there's always times where I go, shit, we go to the range, and I'll be like, oh my God, what the hell? And you'll be like, no, this is it. And it's like, okay, cool. That demonstrates that experience and knowledge, there's gaps and areas to fill for me, and that those are standards that we could fill in and
Yeah.
hash out. Like, but at what point should a shooter be capable of cleaning their rifle on their own, understanding how to do that, or if their zero's off, how do
Re-zeroing.
they re-zero?
Right. That and it's like the re-zero is crazy huge. You would not believe how many people don't quite understand the zero process and the turrets and all that. That's one, to get the bullet into the middle. And I literally write it like everybody, we walk down, right? So we do, when it comes time to zero, shoot a group, stop, stand up, get off your gun, leave it alone, walk down, and then I write Chris up 0.2, left 0.3, and I write it right next to their page, their shot, you know. And then we go down and we tell everybody to do it. There's gonna be a third who went backwards, right? I went the wrong way. Okay, cool. Then you say, who doesn't know how to slip their scales, reset their turrets to 0, 0? We get a ton of people come to class. Their turrets are on a weird number. I have it in my checklist: turrets, reset, dope, whatever. Because you'll go to somebody, what is that? That's my 100-yard zero. What does that mean? Well, I didn't slip it because I figured I was coming here. Okay, but they didn't know how. And then when it comes time to slip it, they're asking you, how do I do this? Like Night Force is another one. Night Force with the zero stop inside the turret. People don't understand that, and that scares them. So they don't want to go near the turret, especially when it has the locks and brakes and zero stops. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So,
But to me, that's when you say standards. I'm not thinking about like, well, how do I, do the PRS barricade better? Because you're already talking about great shooters. Standards of, do you know how to zero your rifle? And people say,
yeah,
well, I came here to shoot, not learn how to maintain my stuff. But it's like, shit, you got to learn how to maintain your stuff. Like that, this precedes,
right.
working on sub MOA accuracy. If you don't know how to zero your rifle, we need to be able to do this. So I don't, man, this might not, I'm going to say that I think this is appropriate. When we went to the Guardian match, we competed. It's totally fun. There's like half the people there have never competed before. It's a festival atmosphere. Everybody has a great time. At the end of day one, shooter one gets paired with last place. Shooter two gets paired with the next one up, and so on and so forth. So it kind of zippers around. And then the next day you do a team match. And I came in first, so I was paired with last place. And when you think about a competition, when you think about the people at the other end, there sometimes there's good reasons and sometimes there's not good reasons, but you just have no idea. Like, how could somebody not do this? Well, people aren't going to go to a competition if they don't know how to shoot. And so I could say right now, the guy that I was paired with who got last place, he could shoot well. He knew how to shoot well. He didn't like fully understand the competition format, and that showed in his day one performance. And I didn't know that he could shoot on day two. But here's what happened. We laid down on our first stage. We talked. The language gap wasn't missing. Like, there wasn't a huge language gap. He understood. It seemed like, okay, cool. Like, I don't know. But I was thinking in my mind, like, we're having a conversation, like maybe we got first and second, but there's a reason that we got first and last. So we lay down on the first stage. I say, okay, I'll get win calls for you. It was like shoot. I'm going to make up a stage because I don't remember what it was, but it was like, 5 targets, different distances, shoot them all. And then your partner shoots them all. Okay, cool. So I shot them all, got the wind holds, fed him the data, and then he shoots and missed them all. And, I noticed that where the impacts were, likely dope wasn't, something was wrong, right? And the next stage, we switched rifles, and he shot my rifle and I shot his rifle. And so we put the data down and he hits them all. Bang, 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 bang. And I shoot and I see, whoa, I was like 3 mils low. So I hold up, and you could follow up on this stage. It was like 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. He hit them all. It was like, okay, sick.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, all right, I'm going to clean this too. And then I shoot and I see my impact. It's like 2 mils low or something, and like a mil left. I make a correction, impact. Like, that was weird. So the next target, I'm like, okay, I'm going to add 2 mils, and I'm going to add a little bit of windage. And it was really close to the target. And then I came up. And so then I was like, fuck, okay, like, we don't have good data, and the zero's off or the dope's off. But we got some points because I was able to follow up. But I realized something's wrong either with the rifle or with the dope that we're using. So the next stages, we asked if it was okay. And I said, hey, can we just use my rifle? And after that, he never missed a shot. So he could shoot great with equipment that worked perfect and understanding of dope. Where was the gap? I don't know, right? We never had the chance to like really fill in the gap to find that disconnect. Had he shot day one with my rifle and dope, he'd have done great. I mean,
Yeah.
we shot amazing. Had we had a procedure for checking standards and going into that, we would have been able to satisfy that. But like, plenty of people show up not understanding. And they're like, yeah, we'll figure it out. Like, I'll get dope. The dope's great. Or I put in the Kestrel because I, put in the velocity that's listed on the box and the G, whatever. And, or I got a BDC reticle. And so, I zeroed it. And for some reason, the BDC is not lining up, and you're like, okay, well, that's a BDC for a 308, and you're shooting,
Yeah, 6.5.
or
Well,
something
and
else.
we've getting that a
it's
lot
like,
lately. but yeah, absolutely. There's always these variations that people don't realize
Yeah.
and they take for granted. I was going to make one point and I kind of spaced it, staring at the screen, looking at myself or something. But yeah, there it's we take a lot of it for granted and we see people on their very first day. And like I said, we have a 12-person class with Mark and I. A third, when we yank everybody's scopes, a third of the scopes are canted in the rings. And normally it's minor but noticeable. They were tightening the rings down, it pulled the scope over a little bit. They just assumed it was good. And then they'll roll themselves over to make it look straight. So we see that. And like somebody had said in the chats here, it's you assume somebody knows how to zero. They really don't. And people will absolutely buy stuff and then attempt to jump in with both feet. And I think we've done a really poor job of explaining what's expected and what you'll do to go to the matches now. Like I said, when Jacob and I used to do it, we had train ups available. Now, not so many places have the train ups because it sort of goes against the PRSE rules. They don't want people to get that unfair advantage by practicing on the range the day before. So you don't see a lot of venues offer new people that path to understand what's expected of them. Like Chris is saying, you could send some. I mean, how many we see people come in our class? It's always the worst person. Like, we'll meet on a Friday or Thursday night. We're going to have Friday, Saturday, Sunday class. So we do our meet and greets with like Mark in our class, right? And we're in the parking lot. It's Thursday night. And we have everybody from a 25-year-old to a 65-year-old. And we go around the room or around the circle and we're like, what's your goal for this class? What's your goal for this class? What's your goal for this class? The 65-year-old's going to say he wants to shoot PRS because he's home reading the computer more. That's what he sees. And it's like, dude, you are not the guy of this class to shoot PRS. No, I'm going to do what I shoot well. My accuracy's good. He shoots from a bench. He hand loads. He shoots itty bitty groups. Now we take him off the bench. We put him prone. He's uncomfortable. He doesn't shoot as well anymore because he's uncomfortable. Why'd you put me on the ground? I want to be on my bench. And you go from there. Now there's a little bit of struggle. And it moves around the room till finally you go, okay, here's a PRS stage. I'm going to give you 4 targets, 90 seconds from here. I want you to shoot 2 targets from here and 2 targets from here. Ready, go. 68 seconds, his first shot goes off. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So there's a disconnect between what they see on the computer and what it looks like, there. Chris and I were looking at the shot timers now and the timings because the clock matters. We took notes of everybody that did stages at the Cameo class. And there's people who timed out, there's people who'd hit every target, and there's people who got 1 shot off before the buzzer went. You know what I mean? So it's so wide. And people don't realize how much the majority of people out there don't know. They think the 300 people that are the consistent, the vocal competitors on the internet. I mean, go look at the PRS member forum. There's less than 400 people active in there. Like the last time I paid any attention to it, when everybody's like, PRS, there was 320 people.
But again, like I've said this a couple of times, those 300 people are very good shooters, yes, and they know all the intricacies, but people don't understand that, right?
Yes.
And I think what you're saying is like, okay, I'm going to break it into 2 categories because I was going to say, 90% of shooting's not actually the shooting because so many people can lay down and be like, look, I printed a
Mm-hmm.
quarter inch group, but you say, okay, great. You did that. Yes. You did that. Right.
Absolutely.
And I know how to fuck you up. Right now, go over there and shoot standing off your tripod in less than 5 minutes. And they can't do it. But I could shoot a really good group on the bench here. And it's like, right, because there's more to it, right? Or you have people that need to learn the fundamentals of marksmanship because they shoot an 8-inch group and they bring it down. But once you get past that threshold, now shooting's not so much shooting anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It's all the other skills, and we need standards for those, because I think we're super hyper focused on groups as a standard.
Yes.
Versus all of the skills that allow you to shoot a group consistently.
You can put a guy on a bench with a bag, with hand loads, and he might be skillful in his hand loads, and he may have been working on them for 9 months.
Mm-hmm.
And he can print a pretty damn series of 5-shot groups. Mm-hmm. He can't do nothing past that bench, that 100-yard shooting, beyond maybe a point hit. He doesn't understand the ballistics of it. He's chasing load development. Now, talk to that guy about reloading. He's probably going to go into a level of minutia that's going to roll my eyes in the back of my head. And I'm going to go, dude, none of that fucking matters. But that's what he uses to get that tiny little group at 100. Meanwhile, I'm like, all right, what's your 600-yard dope? Well, I don't, it's like 3-2.
Yeah. I got a buddy. I'm not going to name him, but he's been on the podcast. He came out, we shoot, we've done a lot of things together. His wife isn't a shooter, right? She's not a shooter, but they came out on a trip and we were doing something else, but he's like, let's go shoot for the day or a little bit. And this was a number of years ago. And I had a plate and he's like, well, I want to shoot 1,000 yards, because sometimes people are like, I want to shoot 1,000 yards. So we'd been shooting and the only plate that we drove out in the grasslands and just put it down and we drove away from it. And I was like, all right, we're at 1,000 yards. And, he shot and we had everything kind of figured out and whatever. But she didn't shoot and wasn't interested. But he's like, you should try it. You should, encourage, whatever. And she's like, okay, whatever. But she had never shot a bolt gun before. So for about 10 minutes, we went through like fundamentals, like and natural point of aim, like connect to it, open your eyes, close your eyes, breathe, and okay, is it on there? And now she dry fired a bunch, like looking at the target, getting everything ready. But the wind was dialed, the elevation was dialed, and we just practiced fundamental, right? And this target is about 1 MOA at 1,000 yards. She practiced, and we're trying not to get her to flinch. So she didn't know that he had slipped in around after she had been dry firing and closing her eyes and dry firing and closing her eyes. She closed her eyes and he put a round in and she shut the bolt. Ding. And she's like, I thought this was going to be really hard. And he's like, do you want to do it again? She's like, no, I just hit the target. Like, okay, whatever. Let's go get lunch. And it's like, okay, well, the only shot she's ever taken from a bolt gun hit a 1 MOA target at 1,000 yards.
Yeah.
I think that and then you didn't do all the work and don't understand what you just did. And you can show that fundamentals work, data works if you have it, and if you line all those up, it's likely that you're going to be able to hit a target. But to get to be self-competent to be able to get yourself to that is much different. Right. It's like I can, if I jump in your car and I say, I want to drive 120 miles an hour. Well, you'd be like, all right, well, step on the gas. Yeah. And if the road is right and the bumpers are right, but it's much different than being like, and then I'd be like, oh, well, that's not hard to race a car.
That gauge, when it gets to 8,000 shift.
Right. So it's much different to be like, oh shit, well then what's hard about car racing?
Exactly.
I could go fast if I step on the gas. Like, well, okay.
Yeah, it's knowing where to turn and when, right?
Exactly. Like, okay, there's so much more, and to get there, it'd be cool to hash out those checks and boxes. And I think it'd be fun. I think it would be really cool to be able to back up and say, like, leave the elite folks to be elite. They don't care about everybody else, really.
No, they don't.
How do we fill in everybody else to to satisfy and have things to explore left and right while they're on their journey to figure out what they even want to do with their rifles, and what does it mean to be able to take yourself forward towards these things and really fill in the gaps. And because the last thing you want to do is go to a range, have something wrong, have to take your rifle to a gun shop to say what's wrong, and they're like, oh, you didn't take your scope caps off, or
Yeah,
or
yeah,
or like,
yeah.
oh, you bought 223 ammo instead of 6.5 Creedmoor ammo. Like, oh shit, like that might sound weird, but that's the kind of stuff that happens a
I
lot.
mean,
Like,
when the Alaska classes, when we were doing like we're doing like 6 now a season. We were doing 10, and all 16 students and guns break. Right? The guns go down. Well, we had support help, and we had a bench set up so that you didn't slow the class down. You got to go over there with Jimmy D, because he's going to take your shit apart and fix and what's wrong with it, because so many guns, and this is where we were bagging on Savages, because the problem is the Savage, like the bases were coming loose and the screws were out of spec, and you'd have to go in and Loctite a guy and retorque their base because 40 rounds in and now their scope's loose. And it's like, fuck, we got to go over there with those guys and do it. You have to expect a certain amount of problems. You have to expect to re-zero. You have to defeat your zero stop and go below it. Because what happens is guys were home, they set their zero stop with the manual right in front of them. They came to a class, left all their paperwork home in the box. Then you tell them, okay, you got to re-zero. You got to go below your zero stop. How do I do that? Because they don't understand the zero stop without the paperwork in front of them. So now you're taking that extra 5 minutes to loosen his zero stop, defeat it, retighten it, move it in, then re-zeroing the guy, and then coming back and shifting his zero and showing him, listen, when I do a zero stop, especially like a Night Force zero stop, love them, right? Because I can set it. I want to be a minute below zero, or I want to be 4 clicks below zero for a little safety, right? So I don't have to constantly defeat it if I don't want to. But you almost always need a minute to a minute and a half, or 2 to 3 tenths down when you're playing around with new ammo or something, or suppressors or whatever the case may be. So, oh my God, these guys, dude, do you guys not know I'm fucking live? The guys from the, who did this? Who did that? They're texting me about this live while I'm live. Stop texting me while I'm live. Fucking
awesome.
Idiots.
But I think
Yeah.
that's fun. And I some people would be embarrassed or whatever. And I really love like the idea of learning easier things that you don't know than always trying to find that one thing that's like out of reach, but you can kind of pull it off every once in a while. With climbing, it's like that. There's hard routes that are rated really hard. And some people love to like find the hardest thing that they can do. But a lot of times there's easier things that they still can't do, but they're too good for that. They won't do those because they're rated easier. But so like, getting out of your own way. And like, well, think about, we went to a local match and we decided we're going to take gas guns to this precision rifle, long range. And so I brought my gas gun, and I was excited to try out this new Night Force, brand new Night Force, put it on, zeroed it. But I didn't tighten the turrets enough. And we got to a stage like it had been shooting great, and then all of a sudden I went to change my dope, and instead of click 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 click, I felt it just go
Mush, 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 mush.
and then I'm like, but we went from shooting like 300-400 yards to starting at 1,000 and then going to 1,500. So I went to go dial a lot because it was 223, and I started spinning it. And it was like whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. I thought, oh shit, right? I mean, all of a sudden, there's just no accountability for rounds because I had no idea what was going on. But knowing, okay, got to get some fix-it sticks, got to tighten it down, got to figure out where the bullet is. And then, while people moved on, there was a target that not being used for the competition, shooting out at it, getting a range and saying, okay, that's 584 yards. And then seeing where my impact was, putting it on the right, zero in the turret to the right dope for that target, and being like, okay, now we can continue the match because we just re-zeroed it on a targeted distance, and now my dope was good for the rest of the match. But you blow a stage, but then okay, I know how to fix this, instead of being like, well, I'm gonna go home.
Yeah.
And I had that moment of, or that guy Ryan was there. I was like, well, shit, I guess I'm just done for the match. And then I was like, wait a minute, I don't have to be done for a match. I got 0 on a stage, but that's not the match. And then we fixed it, and then we went back and shot, and it was totally awesome, and it was totally fun. But knowing like, this is something I can fix in the field, and knowing how to fix your 0 if your turret slips, and those are things that I think people should know earlier.
And that's the knowledge, right? And that's, I think, the missing element is that we take for granted people know this basic stuff. Like, we all kind of leapfrog it. We leapfrog rifle setup. You know what I mean? We just assume. But like one of the tests that Mark does, well, we pull every scope. We mention this all the time. We talk about it all the time. You come to my class, when we go out to the range before we 100-yard 0, we pull every scope to look at it and put it on our tool. Well, one of the things Mark will do is because he's the guy there for that. Well, he'll have that 65-year-old guy. He'll have that dude, and he'll go, can you see that reticle? Because we're about the same age, and I know you can't see that reticle. Well, why can't they see the reticle? Because the box or the scope is shipped in the box with the ocular buried for transport. He never takes it out and adjusts it. So how it came out of the box is how they do it. And then you got to go, whoop, with the ocular. Can you see that reticle now? Oh, yeah, I can. It's like, well, what were you shooting? Because it was not there. There was no reticle. Yeah. But yeah, so you know what I mean? You can't assume these people know these things.
Yeah. And we don't run into them very often until we do. But if you go to things that you don't normally go to, you run into people that have rifles that aren't quite operational.
That's what these guys don't understand. Like when they'll do a thing with me, they'll be like, Frank's irrelevant when matches, or Frank doesn't know this, or Frank doesn't do that, or matter of fact, a comp girl called me this morning. They had a little issue, and so she messaged me. And, have you been shooting? Have you been doing this and doing that? I'm like, no, if I do shoot matches locally, I use a fake name, and I've shot Guardians. And it's like, we haven't seen you. And it's like, yeah, I'm not at the comp. And she's like, I love the comps. I love the social aspect. She's talking with Laura and all that because they know each other from back east. These are back east people. And it's like they love that aspect. But then I see day one people. I see brand new guys like you're saying that are showing up with the brand new scope. I mean, they'll come and I have no problem with it. You can absolutely show up to my class and tell me, I just bought this. I didn't even mount my scope. If you did that, I have no problem with that. You know what I mean? So you can't assume these people know these things. And I'm seeing that guy that walked out of a big box store with a rifle under his arm, and it's the first time he ever heard the name of that product. I never heard of a Tika, but the guy said to get it.
Yeah,
okay.
For sure.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm seeing those level of people. I'm not seeing the hunter people who are using, Southeast matches like a golf weekend. They can go to 3 different matches in a 3-hour drive in 4 states. You know what I mean? And we can't. We have to drive if we want something beyond our green, beyond Pawnee. So that's the difference. It's like you're seeing the same people who have a certain level of proficiency. I'm seeing everyone else. That's where it's the missing piece of the puzzle with certain disconnects between what I'm saying and what the comp people are telling in response to me. It's like, yeah, but I'm not talking to you. You're a constant 25th place guy.
Mm-hmm.
You're well beyond the person I'm speaking to, unless we're talking about shaving a second here or a second there off of something.
Or you take them out of that niche, because like CD does that a lot, right? You have rifle shooters that come and they have pistol stages, and you figure out really quickly, are they well-rounded shooters or not?
Mm-hmm.
Because they can't shoot a pistol, or they say, okay, you got to swap guns with your partner, and now you got to shoot carbine for a little bit, and they can't do that. Or at the Sniper Adventure Challenge one year, there was a disassembled AK, and you had 3 minutes to put it together and hit this target. And it's like, shit, if you couldn't put together an AK, you weren't going to get any points.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so like, but it sounds like older competitions took advantage of this kind of concept more than maybe they do now. But think about how, because you might be thinking, because I know I would be thinking if I was listening to this, yeah, that's fine and good, but this doesn't apply to me because I'm better than all that, or something along that line. I'm trying to be succinct about how I would feel. Like, okay, cool, but they're not talking to me. But think about this: if you build out a base and expand upward off of that base, it identifies clear paths that you could have high-level competition stages based on those standards, like a slip turret re-zero in the fewest number of shots.
I mean, that's typical.
Things that would be practical. If you were a hunter and something happened and you were in the field, that would cause you to either go home or fix it in the field very quickly and simply, or a stress thing. Like, it's stressful to say, locate, range, and engage a target in 4 minutes, or it's stressful to say, shoot 12 targets in 90 seconds. But there are other levels of stress, like the biathletes, like, okay, shoot these 5 plates with your heart rate at 180 offhand. Like, yeah, that's stressful too. There's a lot of different types of stress that aren't capitalized because we haven't hashed out this base fully enough to actualize those branches. But when you go places like, well, your courses have a lot of interesting diagnostics. And if you go to rifles only, Jacob, being based in fundamentals and having his own set of standards, has stages that you wouldn't normally run into because they're thinking about building up off of all of these things that you could run into.
Yeah, it's a vertical pipe kind of.
Yeah.
And so yes, exactly. So with in Jacob, because his classes are longer, he's a 6-day PR1 and 2 combo. I don't know if he's modified. I think it's a 5 now, but it was 6-day when I drop.
Did it stop?
Yeah, there was a quick drop, but that might have been just something else. I heard her. She's alive too. But yeah, that was a weird one. We had a quick drop. Yeah, that was a quick drop.
But I like that, because then you're not just simply saying like, okay, well, we got a 90-second stage and 1.5 MOA targets, and you just got to shoot fast and move fast. But it's like, okay, well, with shooting fast and moving fast, that is one skill, but it's not all of the skills, right? Or you say like, here's a troop line of pretty bigger targets, 2 MOA, but you got to be able to carry the wind. Okay, well, carrying the wind is a standard at a high level. Shooting small targets fast is a standard at a high level. But those are 2 small things that build off of kind of a similar pipeline. But there are other things like, okay, cardiovascular stress, psychological stress, time stress, the problem solving aspects that lead somebody to be capable of shooting in the first place are fundamental, because you can prove that somebody could sit down on a bench and shoot very small groups, but be completely useless with that system out of that context. And then you have people that are highly effective across the board, but can't reproduce groups that are that small, but they can keep the parameters such that their performance stays good. Like if you're shooting, let's just say, let's say you go to a competition and all the targets are 2 MOA, then technically somebody that can always shoot 1 MOA is and they could read the wind well, they could not drop shot. Shit. If you're good at reading the wind, let's say you could read the wind like, some stupid standard, like to 1 mile an hour, 2 miles an hour. And all the targets were 2 MOA, and you shot an inch and a quarter group, you could technically hit all the targets at a competition.
Mm-hmm.
And that inch and a quarter group, people would laugh at and say, look, I just shot these 1/4 inch groups. I'm going to be so much better than them. But then if they can't read the wind,
Yeah, they're 4 mile an hour wind guy.
yeah, they're going to miss targets more than the 1 MOA shooter. So like, what about all those skills? But I think it's so easy to fall back into, I could just pull the trigger really good and just print a small group. It's like, man, that's not really shooting like in any practical context.
Right, right.
What's interesting is knowing what to do and how to handle it. And if we have a list of standards that then those pipes come up off of, all of the stage design could be reassessed to capitalize on those different elements. And I think that's pretty cool.
One, because we hit the hour just now, and I want to just say really quick, I'm not going to kill this because we're still going, but we're looking at writing and putting this pen to paper. So we're talking about this stuff and we're kind of flushing it out. We're bouncing ideas off you guys. And we're already working to put this plans in motion so we can present those standards, or what we consider practical standards for today's world, right? Because it changes. 10 years ago, that standard was different. Today, the standard has changed. So what's a good, and I think, to be honest with you, looking at the calibers we're running today, looking at the accuracy we're getting out of those calibers, and the way we're moving, I think a standard written today would carry longer than a standard written 12 years ago would have. I think the standard 12 years ago would have fell off very quickly. Today, I think this creating a standard based on what we're seeing now is going to sustain a lot longer. I feel we've reached a plateau right now. And the only peaks we're seeing in that plateau, like the only chunky parts that are sticking up, are in the hunting caliber worlds with like the 7 mils, the PRC and people trying to rejigger the hunting rifle world has movement. But our world has basically leveled off and fixed. There's debate on maybe this chassis versus that chassis, how much weight versus, balance. But the calibers and the velocities have sort of leveled out. And we're not playing with that as we were when we were deciding 6.5, 6 mil, 308 still playing in there. We know where the 6 mils are versus those other calibers. We know if you get that velocity in that Goldilocks zone, your recoil is going to be down, your bullet's still going to perform, and your accuracy is going to be top notch without a lot of work, right? Versus trying to do that same thing with a 308. You're not going to be able to get those same results. So I really do think we can create a standard today that's, I don't want to say flexible, but is maybe universal is a way to put it. And that will translate more than an old school prone qual ever would have.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Because basically, if you take a bench rest or a prone qual of group size, that standard moves. And it's are you a bench rest? Are you this? Are you that? What do you, that's group size, right? But if we look at it and create the standard that's an across the course, that's in line with our accuracy today, in the calibers we're shooting, I think that standard will maintain longer and be more valuable to someone than the previous group size.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, technology, information, data has come so much farther that I think it makes it more possible. But at some point, right, if you could make a rifle that, you you could advertise as a 1/4 inch guaranteed. It wouldn't. I don't think it would improve people shooting all that much if they're a 4-inch shooter. You know, they're a 4-inch shooter because they don't have the fundamentals to be consistent. But equipment now is so good that most of the time you could say like, this isn't your equipment, this is you. Let's figure it. Or it's your
Yeah.
equipment because you didn't know how to put it together. And so, you know, how do we, you know, or you think about like, well, a lot of standards came out of military. You hear people saying like, okay, well, you know, the M4s that I qualified with, you know, like they had to be 4 inches or better. And you think 4 inches, like shit, you would have to be prone and shoot with pretty good fundamentals just to be able to hit some of these targets if your gun shoots like a shotgun to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
But we're not shooting guns that come out of the box 4 inches. We're
No,
shooting
not
guns that
anymore.
come
I
out of the
mean,
box
a
like,
bad one's going to be 2, and you're going to know that's bad. And really, if you're not going out and getting something that's 5/8, 3/4 out of the box, then you chose poorly.
right?
You know,
there's something wrong.
Right. There's
something wrong.
really something wrong if your gun out of the box with factory ammo at 100 yards, it is not 3/4 or less. You know, that's pretty standard right now. Now you go out farther, the SDs will start to come in, you know, and those things will start to play. So yeah, at 800 yards in, you know, a box of Hornady with an SD of fucking 28, you're not going to shoot an 8-inch group with it. You know, you might be lucky to pull off a 10 or 12, but at 100, you won't notice that because the SD's not bothering you.
Mm-hmm.
So,
all right. Yeah. So now I agree. Like there's so much accessible that you can isolate where things are coming from really well. And I think then you can establish these baselines. Like you could say, here's the standard. Like you need a gun that shoots minimum 2 inches or you need an SD.
But I almost think we need to reduce it to like 3 out of 5 on a 1 MOA plate, you know, and get away from MOA size. I mean, MOA size is great, but that should be the sharpshooter's discussion, not the marksman's discussion. The marksman needs to be 3 out of 5 on a 45% IPSC. You know, 3 out of 5 on a 66% IPSC. 3 out of 5 on a full-size IPSC. You know, at 1,000 yards. That kind of standard, I think, is where we need to go in the first bucket. The second bucket, you can start talking, don't drop a point, now tighten your group. And then the third bucket becomes almost, you know, religiously about that, but then moves into the SD bucket, right? You know what I mean? So you're the marksman. You need 3 out of 5 hits, you know, in 90 seconds. You're the sharpshooter. You need all the hits in, you know, 70 seconds. And by the way, your group could be 2 MOA smaller. Mm-hmm. Now you're the expert. Now you start looking at, well, dude, your load is SD is 12. You need to get that to 5. You know, oh, you're hitting this and this. Well, you're typically 4/10 off center with your wind calls. You need to tighten that up. So now how I talk to you is completely different than how I talk to the other guy. And that seems to be a missing element to this, is I can't talk to day one guy the way I'm talking to the expert. Mm-hmm. And people want to automatically jump to expert terminology with people. And you find out you can't go to expert terminology. You have to put everybody. And that's why it brings us all back full circle, is that we're not separating each other in that way, which we should. I should be able to look at you at a match and go, that's the marksman over there. Okay, what can we do to help that guy? Well, those are the sharpshooters over there. Yeah, they're the dickheads. They think they're all this and that. Well, there's the experts over there. I want to watch what they're doing. What wind calls are they making? You know what I mean? So there needs to be something up front that says, what's your baseline? where do you fall within the community, A, B, or C? And then that's going to determine how we talk to you and what your standard is going to be.
Mm-hmm.
You right?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying, guys?
And there's different combinations that can satisfy the requirements of hitting a target, right? Like
Yeah.
we're saying, like if you can shoot a 1/4 inch, but you read the wind to 4 miles an hour, there's a distance where your hit percentage is going to be identical to somebody that shoots 1.5 inches, but reads wind to 1 mile an hour. Like there's going to be a distance where one has an advantage and the other doesn't, but there's also going to be a distance where they're equally the same. And if we're shooting at a distance and I know this shooter can shoot a 1/2 inch all day, but they're missing a target, well, it can't be they're shooting, right? It's got to be wind. It's got to be SD. It's got to be something other than can you shoot a small group. But if somebody's missing and you look and they shoot like a 4-inch craft 4-inch craft group and they're shooting at a 2 MOA target, you'd expect them to miss sometimes.
I want to, so question come up in the chat box here. So the question comes up about guys sandbagging. And that's a culture and community thing. When you have, the PRS created a culture that cheating is trying. And that if you can get away with it and not get caught, you are okay. If you know that guy's sandbagging and he plays it in this match and then he tries to do it in this match, fuck that guy. That should be the community stepping up and doing that. Sandbagging shouldn't be something that's expected. It should be something that's shunned. It's just like the ND culture. You had people NDing. They changed the rules to say an ND only counts if you miss the berm. Well, that's a culture of that's a negative culture. That's something teaching that community bad habits. That's within the community to fix that. If I see you're sandbagging, I'm going to call you out. And then you know what? If you're going to do it again, you're not going to be invited back. Nah, we don't want you to play this game no more because you're always playing games with it. But sandbagging, I mean, if you're creating a system that's recording information and then you sandbag it, well, then that's almost going to be a highlight. He always does his standard low and then his match high. That's going to become obvious within 2 to 3 matches right off there. And then you can always create a penalty system for that. Mm-hmm. But it's obvious. It's not like you don't see it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
but I love the idea of setting this baseline and then building up off of it and setting criteria for growth.
I mean,
and,
right. Yeah. The series, these guys paid from day one that they paid the series to keep their score. What did they ever do with your score? Nothing. They just put it in a spreadsheet comparing it to the other guy. Your score was never used for advanced. Now, they ended up taking marketing information from you, what gun you're shooting, what products you use, because then they give that back to, what the pros use. That became another cottage industry, right? What the pros use promoted the website and all that information. And now that's selling products. Hey, look, Team Gap uses Bushnell. And so Bushnell scores are going to be higher, and that kind of stuff.
Oh, I see what you're saying. You lost me there for a second. I thought, wait. But so what you're basically saying is that with this baseline idea and ranking and stuff like that, if a league had scores, those scores don't give you any real information, but you could, if you had standards and numbers that go along with it, you say, oh, they've got a 400, whatever, and 400 means, they can read the wind to 3 miles an hour. They can shoot less than an MOA positionally. They can, build and break positions in under 15 seconds.
Now your score has value beyond the match.
Right.
You know what I mean? So if we're looking, we have the computers, we have the practice score, we have all of these things. And a lot of that practice score was designed around handgun. So there can be a time element to it.
Right. I like that, like almost like a serial number or a barcode or a social security number where parts of it indicate different elements.
Yeah, and
you
so
could say, oh, you're a super duper black belt in prone 600 yards shooting, because there's bench rest guys that shoot 600
well,
yards.
you can
right?
say,
Like,
well, hey, what's your PRS score? Oh, I'm a 68-83. Oh, you're a class B guy because he's an 83.
Right. But
you
then
know,
on silhouettes or on
yeah,
NRL Hunter, they might have no ranking, and they say, okay, well, like, good, you've got gaps there, or you don't care about those gaps, which doesn't matter, but you know it when you present that, whatever that says, oh, you've never done those, you're super good at this. That makes sense because you've specialized. But jack of all trades could say, like, well, I'm filling in the left and right limits.
right. Well, even that last side could be your classification. So like 85, a score between 100 and so on, 85 and up, 85 to 100 is an A class.
Right.
And if somebody said to me, I'm a 460-83, hey, dude, you're almost A class. I know who you are already, and I can talk to you in that way. And so now I understand so much more about you as a shooter based on your score from these series. But these series, the score is meaningless right now. It doesn't tell you anything because
it gives you a yardstick to say at this.
Yeah, but I mean, right now you can have a guy shot
it.
3 matches and a guy who shot 5 matches and have the same number.
Sure, totally. Yeah, I mean, right.
Yeah,
it doesn't tell you much about the shooting. It tells you
they're either
good or they're rich.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And so that's kind of what I'm getting at is that kind of information, And so there's so many things we're doing where it's information rich, but we're leaving it on the floor.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. And that could be massively utilized by every discipline, because there's overlap. Like a F-class shooter, they need to shoot prone well, and they need to read wind well. And reading wind applies to other things. So you would expect, like, Eric Cortina to be a high wind reader score.
Right.
But maybe not silhouette shooting, but that part.
Yeah, his positional may be bad because he's an F-class guy.
Right.
He's used to $1,000 bench rest fucking rig with a $400 rear bag, and he's micro adjusting from 7 positions. Get him off his belly, he may struggle a little bit in the beginning or until he gets himself caught up.
Right. But if you were like, man, I want to learn wind, and you look and you're like,
Eric,
he's who I want to go to.
Yeah, Eric's the guy.
So, but you would know that from those, or like somebody that wins the Sniper Adventure Challenge. You might not be like, well, I don't want to go to them to learn how to compete in PRS but they're fit. So if I have like fitness questions, they can walk around for a couple days.
That guy ran a 28-hour race.
Right.
In 25 hours. You know what I mean? I want that guy.
Right. But they tell you different things, and it's all in that spectrum. Or somebody that hunted, like, oh, this guy has all the goats from all the continents. Like, oh, okay, well, maybe, or they win NRL hunters. Like, maybe I want to talk to them about binoculars or rangefinders, but that information you would know right away if it was hashed out in more detail. But it would have to be an entity separate from the leagues, because the leagues are invested in their niche, but you'd have to have a way to test it I mean, that's kind of like what the craft kind of started, which was a standard and a way to measure, like, how are your fundamental consistencies? And it doesn't say whether you have a good gun or good fundamentals. It kind of gives you like, well,
you're here,
whatever it is.
Yeah, you are here.
3 inches, right?
Yeah.
So, if you want to shoot better than 3 inches means something for a goal. And so that's a standard baseline of saying, like, okay, cool. Then we added with the unconventional skill assessment, the USA stuff is like, okay, what's your build and break time? Can you deploy your tripod? Can you locate a target? Can you transition these, and starting to hash all of those things out? But those are based on baselines that we've measured and seen where people fall apart, separate from any specific niche.
Yeah. Hey, Everyday Sniper guys, I'm going to log off for you guys. The live is still going on. We're going to talk a little bit more about this, so you can follow up more of this in the live for the Everyday Sniper guys. Thanks for listening. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for being part of the Everyday Sniper. Hope you guys like. We've been coming back and giving you guys more and more and more, and we're gonna keep doing that. So thanks a lot, Everyday Sniper guys. Wah! Beauty.
That's awesome.
Yeah, how great is that? That we can just go and just go and do that kind of thing. Is we could do the podcast. We're on the live. You got the video, and then eventually we're going to be out in the field. We just need the weather to be our friend for a little bit, and we're going to get all that. But yeah, I mean, I'm able to record both of these and give people a live, and we can chat and interact with them and answer some questions. We got the chat box going, all that stuff. So boom, we're there. But good topic, I really think. Right, we're kind of looking at some of these things in a different way, and I don't know. I just think it's we're missing this part of it. It still seems to be we're a massive collection of individuals, and it's this guy does a little of this guy does a little of that, this guy does a good job over here, this guy does a good job, but it's still disconnected from each other. So that's kind of where I was with that thing. Nice little crowd we got too.
Yeah, I think it's a fun thing to talk about, and it opens up like it's like one of those like good idea fairy kind of things where you go, oh shit, this would be cool, but talking about it, then you're able to create that mental framework that we could actually create a roadmap that would be usable.
Yeah,
which would be fun.
Yeah,
and then it just needs people.
And that's all it is we're talking about building a map. And some people may not want to, follow that map. Other people are all about that map, but we're talking about building a map and saying, these are the roads traveled but still giving you those options to take those side dirt roads and to find your own way or shortcuts. No one's discouraging anybody from building a better mousetrap in this way. We're not trying to say don't do this. We're just trying to say we see a disconnect. We see this guy's spot on and knows what's going on. This guy doesn't have the first clue. This one's somewhere in the middle, and the pipeline could be streamlined.
Totally.
Yeah.
And to kind of pull the curtain to the side a little bit, I do have high-end PRS shooters reach out to me and say, what do I need to know for competition dynamics?
Yeah.
What do I need to know for NRL Hunter? And so it's not just saying like, oh, the people want to know what are the standards. And if they were out there and say, look, for you to be competitive at this level on this discipline, you should be able to do these benchmark skills. And then, you could test yourself and then decide if you want to go. And I mean, if you just want to go anyway, it doesn't matter. But there are a lot of people that want to know that before they go to a match. They won't just go blind and say, fuck it, I know how to shoot good, I'm going to go. They go, oh shit.
Well, that's why people don't come back. Because they don't know, they don't see, they go blind, they have a bad experience because what was in their head is one thing. The reality is so different, they won't come back. And that's where you lose. And then the non-mentors. So the pipeline works really, really well when a guy is brought up in a mentor program. He has a close group of friends that are into it. They're probably top 25 shooters. He brings the next guy in. They mentor him. The next thing you know, that guy's a 25 place shooter pretty quick. Versus the guy who shows up on his own, stands there on his own, is trying to decipher what he sees on his own. Maybe he gets like 3 pieces of random advice, and now he came in 98th out of 100. He may not come back.
Right. And nobody wants that to happen.
No, and that's the negative side. You don't want that guy to go away upset. This is sports entertainment. You have to have a good time or you're not going to come back. So that's kind of where that tends to go. But yeah, it's just it is what it is that way. and we want more people to have a better time. The more people that have a better time, the bigger the community, and the more, blah, 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 blah.
Right. But it also allows that kind of cross-platform education to take place. And I think though, once there's standards and they go, oh, well, what, here's something that I'm missing, but what I do doesn't satisfy this. Like what does do this? And you could probably go say, oh shit, they do this at the Rifleman's Team Challenge, or they do this at the Guardian. And they're like, well, what are those? I've only done, I've only shot tactical games. What are the Guardians and the Rifleman's Team Challenge, or what is PRS, or what's NRL Hunter? But if they knew that those things were available, they go, oh, you know what? I've only done these 3 out of the 6. What does these other ones? And then you say, oh, well, there's a whole series that does, F class.
Yeah.
Somebody might say like, well, I just want to shoot paper at 1,000. You're like, oh, I think I've got an outlet for you.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what we're talking about. Cool, man. I think we're pretty good with some of this. We can kill it. And we've been an hour and a half on there. Thanks a lot, you guys that popped into the live with us. Enjoyed it. It was a good time, good flow of conversation. We had good people in the chat box there. So if you need to get back to this, you can go back and watch it. But absolutely, man. End stream.
When it clicked back, did it kick people out?
I think so.
Because I think, when it